interpretation in the lower part of your screen, and you can select French, English, or neutral if you want to listen the real speak of the various presenters and speakers. The second aspect is about the question and answer. During the question and answer session, you can use the hand raise, and after the moderator will give you the floor, we will switch on your microphone so that you can raise your question. So these are the two main instructions. I would like also to make you aware that this meeting is recorded and is now streamed also on YouTube, and it will be also available after the event for those who would like to watch this event afterwards and could not participate live. So without any further transition, I would like to give the floor to Christelle Pratt for the opening of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, who are joining us from across the 6 regions of the OACPS and here in Europe. A warm welcome to this, the launch event of the 11th EDF Intra-ACP Climate Services and Related Applications Programme, ClimSa. I am Christelle Pratt, the OACPS Assistant Secretary General for Environment and Climate Action, and I'm honoured to have been given the opportunity to introduce the 3 distinguished speakers that have kindly agreed to participate in the high-level opening segment of this launch. We are indeed fortunate to have with us today the OACPS Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Jorge Rebelo Pinto Chicote, who will speak to us about OACPS leadership in identifying and programming important initiatives such as ClimSa. We also welcome Mrs. Carla Montesi, the Director for the Green Deal and Digital Agenda in the Directorate General for International Partnerships of the European Commission, who will share with us the rationale for the European Union's investment in ClimSa. And we welcome the remarks of the Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture of the African Union Commission, Her Excellency Madame Josefa Sarko, who will outline the importance of partnerships for climate services. So with those brief introductions of our distinguished speakers, may I please invite OACPS Secretary General, His Excellency Jorge Chicote, to make his opening remarks. You have the floor, Secretary General.
Thank you very much, Madam Pratt, and Your Excellencies, representatives and officials of regional organizations of the OACPS, representatives of international partners of the OACPS, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all for this launching event of the Intra-ACP Climate Services and Related Applications Program, which has been accorded the acronym ClimSa. I'm honored to be part of this event, and despite the many challenges that we face, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are making progress in many ways to improve the lives of our peoples. Let me also offer my appreciation for the consistent support, commitment, cooperation, and collaboration that has resulted in the realization of the ClimSa program. In particular, I recognize with appreciation the European Commission's Directorate General for International Partnership, the Joint Research Center, the World Meteorological Organization, and the European Organization for the Exploitation of Meteorological Satellites. These bodies and organizations have accepted to accompany us since the inception phase of the program formulation and are now willing to work closely with us to implement ClimSa. It would be remiss not to acknowledge the leadership of the OACPS and EU heads of state who have and who continue to recognize the increasing vulnerabilities of members and regions of the OACPS to the impacts of climate change. Through the strengthened production, availability, delivery, and application of science-based climate prediction services, ClimSa will most certainly contribute to supporting our efforts to achieve the 2030 agenda and implement the Paris Agreement. ClimSa will enable us to prevent desertification, preserve ecological biodiversity, and ensure the sustainable management and use of water resources. This will be done by being able to provide timely, appropriate data and information that allows decision makers at both policy and technical levels to decide on and choose the best adaptation option as we address climate variability and climate change. The overall objective of the ClimSa program is to strengthen the climate service value chain through building the capacities of decision makers at all levels in order to effectively use climate information and services. ClimSa will become increasingly important and instrumental in supporting the members and the regions of the OACPS in our efforts to build resilience and pursue sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the financing agreement for ClimSa program amounts to 85 million euros. It has been allocated equitably to all 6 regions of the OACPS, while there is an emphasis on the 38 small island developing states seats of the OACPS, given that they are among the most vulnerable to the myriad impacts of climate change. The OACPS supports the implementation of a number of key multilateral strategies and agreements, such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Small Islands Developing States Accelerated Modalities of Action, also known as the Samoa Pathway, the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and of course, to that, I had already mentioned the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement. Climate information services are key for our poverty reduction efforts. They are key if we are to deliver low emissions, climate resilient development solutions through the implementation of our national adaptation plans and our nationally determined contributions as outlined under the Paris Agreement. To avoid losses from climate shocks and stresses or to reap the potential benefits from changing climatic patterns. All actors and stakeholders, whether governments, businesses, or communities, need accurate, timely, and accessible climate information services. It is clear that science-based climate information is critical and necessary to building resilience to climate change impacts. Therefore, by extension, the development of climate services applications in different climate sensitive sectors, such as agriculture, health, water, energy, housing, infrastructure, tourism, industry, and trade is essential. ClimSa envisages developing methodologies and tools to evaluate the socio-economic benefits of climate information services in order to make a strong case that is a worthwhile endeavor to invest in climate information services. The recognition of the tangible links between investing in climate services and appropriate applications and improved sustainable development and poverty reduction outcomes should motivate investment in modernizing hydrometeorological services. Ensuring strengthened links between the service providers with the service users is critical for improved productivity. Improved productivity could be the catalyst that lifts the millions of our populations out of poverty, since their livelihoods are inextricably linked to shocks from climate variability and climate change. In my capacity as Secretary General of the OACPS, I believe that this current investment from the 11th EDF intra-ACP envelope will yield multi-fold returns. By building the capacities of regional climate centers in regions of the OACPS, we are to benefit from the delivery of better climate services. This will lead to new opportunities for members and regions of the OACPS to build climate resilient societies, and that the ClimSa program will make a discernible and lasting difference to the lives, livelihoods, and well-being of our people. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude by expressing the commitment of the OACPS to working closely with all of you to effectively implement this program. Please join me in launching ClimSa program and wishing it successful and impactful outcomes. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Giacotti, and thank you for your official declaration that ClimSa is now launched. If I might now turn to the European Commission's Director, Mrs. Carla Montesi. You have the floor, Madam.
Many thanks, Christelle. Distinguished guests and friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to be here with such distinguished speakers, and I will say long-time friends, the Secretary General, His Excellency Giacotti, and Her Excellency Mrs. Sacco. to launch this very ambitious program, ClimSa, that has already very well introduced by the Secretary General. Both organizations, the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States and the African Union Commission, are long-time partners of the European Union, and climate change has been and will continue to be one of the strategic priorities of our cooperation. You know already very well the European Union desire and the commitment to shape the complex geopolitical world that we face. But we know also that the European Union cannot succeed alone in addressing common priorities such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and many other global challenges. We really believe that only working together with a common action, we can succeed. And with the launching of the program today, I can say it's exactly the results of this common action. Joint cooperation, joint collaboration of international and regional partners, including all ICP regional climate centers, the World Meteorological Organization, the European Commission Joint Research Center, and the EUMETSAT. So I really am very pleased, very proud of all the effort done to be where we are today. And we look forward to seeing, as the Secretary just said, to seeing the fruits of the seeds that we have planted together. But allow me to emphasize that we are particularly excited about this new program, as we trust it will bring climate science to the most vulnerable communities in the world. And will contribute, we hope, to make science-informed decision at all levels. This is the key objective that we want to achieve. So we are confident that this program will strengthen all the components of the climate services value chain, making an extra effort to reach the last mile with innovative solutions. This, in some way, will mean making sure that, in one hand, we understand the user's needs, and in the other, we have a final product or services that is customized to this need and delivered in a format easy to grasp and to act upon. You know already that in Europe, there is a wealth of experience in producing and using climate data to the benefit of the society. We are thrilled, I would say, at the prospect of sharing this expertise with all our partners, and in particular, the wealth of data and services that are provided by Copernicus. The very well known, it's the European Union Earth Observation Program. I will add that in facing climate change, the challenges of this century, we all agree that the need for climate adaptation informed by science is now more urgent than ever. This need is also very well answered in the new European Union adaptation strategy that we have just adopted a few weeks ago. This new strategy calls for action to push the frontiers of knowledge on adaptation so we can gather more and better data on climate-related risk and losses. As you know, this strategy includes also an international dimension, reaffirming the importance and the role of the European Union in climate change at the global level. Maybe just ending this opening, allow me to say that I think we all agree that the pandemic in which we are living is first and foremost a human tragedy, but allow me to underline that it's also a wake-up call. I think this pandemic has made the need to anticipate crisis, the need to address underlying risks to avoid the catastrophe even more evident. So we really hope that in the recovery of this pandemic, governments show that it is possible to build better, to build more inclusive and resilient society, and of course for the well-being of all the citizens. Of course, the essential piece of this puzzle and the essential piece of this recovery is to have a science and risk-informed decision-making. This, once again, the essential purpose of this new program. So I will end the saying, as the Secretary General, on behalf of the European Union, I would like really thank once again all the partners for the hard work, the excellent collaboration, and I really wish you an excellent implementation of the program. And allow me to say, I hope to meet all of you again very soon to share and celebrate the success of the program. So good luck in the implementation. I will follow with all my heart. Many thanks. Over to you, Christelle.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Montesi, for your opening remarks. And if I might now turn to the third and final speaker of this distinguished panel for the opening segment, to you, the African Union Commission's Commissioner, Her Excellency Josefa Sako. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you very much, Madam Christelle, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon, every one of you from Addis Ababa. Good morning, depending on your geographical location. Your Excellency, Mr. George Rebelo Pinto Chikoti, the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, my dear brother and cousins. Ms. Christelle Parks, Assistant Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, Madam Mrs. Clara Montesi, the Director for Green Deal and Digital Agenda, Directorate General for International Partnership, a European Commission, representative of the African Regional Economic Communities and Regional Organizations present in this event, representative of the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program and the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. Greetings from the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be part of the dignitary speaking at the launch of the intra-ACP climate service and related application ClimSa program today. Permit me to briefly highlight fundamental circumstances that have led to our meeting today and which will form the basis of our future ongoing collaboration between our institutions. The work towards the launch we are witnessing today started nearly a decade ago on the eve of the 10th EUMETSAT Users Forum in Africa on the 30th of September 2012. On this day, the African Union Commission, the African Regional Economic Commission and Regional Organization, and the Secretariat of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of States, on the invitation of the Ministers of Water and Energy of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, signed the Addis Ababa Declaration to support the implementation of the global framework for climate services in Africa. The European Union, the World Meteorological Organization, the European Organization for the Exploitation of Meteorological Satellites, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, and the African Center for Meteorology application for development witnessed the signing of the Addis Ababa Declaration. We appreciate their support. By then, the reality of the message of the fourth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states that Africa is one of the continents which are almost vulnerable to climate change, are the most vulnerable to climate change and climate variability, was very fresh and formed part of the agenda of our political leadership. The African Union head of states and governments expressed grave concern on the vulnerability of Africa's socio-economic and productive system to climate change and variability, and to the continent's low mitigation and response capacity. A critical question was made then, which was, what should be done in order to adapt to climate change and to better manage the risk of climate variability and change? Fittingly, this was also the time when the preparation of the African Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, was being finalized, and the first version of the Integrated Africa Strategy on meteorology, the weather and the climate services was being prepared. Unsurprisingly, Agenda 2063 sets environmentally sustainable and climate resilience, economy, and community as one of the 20 goals to be attained by 2026. And the meteorological strategy set provision of weather and climate services as one of its strategic pillars, considering that the climate challenge is global in nature. I am pleased to note that the participation of the sisters region, the Caribbean and the Pacific, added impetus to the mobilization of resources for the implementation of the framework. This was unmistakably stated through the 7 September 2014 Benoni Statement, which was hosted by the Republic of South Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the ClimSa program we are launching today addresses the need for adequate, timely, and reliable climate services, which respond to the African Union's development goal. The program enhances the capacity of our member states, as well as the regional institutions, in order for them to be able to develop and mainstream science-based climate information services and prediction into policy and decision-making, planning and practice at all levels. That is a mainstream approach. Permit me to acknowledge the role played by the African Regional Climate Center, namely ACMAD, the AgriMet Regional Center, the IGAD's Climate Prediction and Application, and the SADC Climate Service Center in developing and delivering weather and climate services to African Union member states through the ClimSa project. We hope to enhance the capacity of the newly established ICAS Regional Capacity Center for Central Africa. Development and delivery of services for disaster risk reduction was part of the work ACMAD did under the EU-funded monitoring for environment and security in Africa MESA project. The current ClimSa program expands the scope of climate service development under MESA to cover not only disaster risk reduction, but also other sectors, including agriculture, energy, forestry, health, and water. To this end, I wish to thank the European Union for the continued financial support towards the development and the delivery of climate service for socio-economic development in Africa through the MESA and ClimSa program. In the same vein, I also like to express our appreciation to the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States for allocating resources for critical programs such as ClimSa. We therefore request both the EU and the OACPS to conclude these crucial areas of weather and climate services, even in their next programming. Because climate change has made such programs indispensable for women's existence in Africa. In conclusion, I wish to reiterate that at the African Union level, the integrated African strategy on meteorology, weather, and climate services is a blueprint defining our strategic direction on weather and climate services in line with the African Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. The ClimSa program will further the implementation of this strategy. The African Union Commission, therefore, as mandated by the member states, continue to lead coordination efforts on the continent. We welcome all partners to join hands together with us and not work in isolation. I pledge my personal and the African Union Commission support and commitment to the implementation of ClimSa program. I thank you very much and wish you a very fruitful and productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Sarko, for your opening remarks. And I'm sure that Excellencies, distinguished delegates and all participants in this launch of ClimSa will join with me in thanking our distinguished speakers, His Excellency Chikoti, the OACPS Secretary General, Mrs. Carla Montesi, the Director of the Green Deal and Digital Agenda for INPA, European Commission, and Her Excellency Madame Sarko, the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development. I hope I got that correct.
Agriculture,
rural development. Sorry,
blue economy, sustainable environment.
Yes, I did get it. Oh dear, blue economy and sustainable environment as well. Apologies, Commissioner, for not getting your full title correct. It's a very big agenda that you have responsibilities for. But I thank all speakers for their inspirational, their very informative and enthusiastic remarks about the importance of climate services for now and for our future. And so this ends the opening segment of this launch event, and I thank you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I believe that I'm going to now be taken over by a moderator. I yield now to the moderator for this launch event. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, Your Excellencies. My name is Leah from the African Union Commission. I'll be moderating this next session, and I have the honor to welcome our previous moderator, who is going to be our first speaker. And this is Ms. Christelle Pratt, who is the Assistant Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. And she is in charge of the Environment and Climate Action Department, which is a newly established unit of the OACPS. Assistant General Christelle, you have the floor. She will be making a presentation on an overview of the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. And all protocols observed. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity on behalf of the OACPS Secretary General and the OACPS to provide a brief overview of the intra-ACP climate services and Related Applications Program. And we've heard it time and again in the opening remarks. We now refer to this important program as ClimSa. It is fitting that I start by providing some context for why ClimSa is important for us now and into the future. We know that while the 79 members of the OACPS have contributed the least to greenhouse gas emissions, approximately 4%, they are amongst the most vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. The paradox is that while their vulnerability to climate change related impacts is comparatively high, their coping capacities are very low. 40 are least developed countries, 15 are landlocked developing countries, and 38 are small island developing states. We regularly see across OACPS's 6 regions the devastating effects of extreme climate and weather events, which are increasing in frequency, and we see temperature and rainfall patterns becoming ever more erratic. While OACPS member states have been able to make significant strides in their development over the last decades, climate-related hazards and climate change impacts of our member states have set back development progress, and by up to 20 years for some of our members. And on average, more than 10 million people in the OACPS regions are affected annually. And just this month, in fact, just this month, we received an appeal from Eswatini for €18 million to meet some of the costs of recovery from the impacts of Cyclone Eloise that struck Eswatini earlier this year. Such events significantly hamper efforts to achieve the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals, and in the case of SIDS, the Samoa Pathway. With more than 60% of people, many who are small farmers, reliant upon rain to produce food for market and for subsistence, and with about 90% of disasters being weather and climate related, the case for climate-informed decision-making is clear, and it will be key and crucial if we are to face the challenges of the climate crisis. The utility of and access to timely climate information and services for everyday decisions being made at all levels is growing. And this is becoming more evident worldwide, but such information and services are not readily available to all of us, such as for many in the OACPS. This makes the ClimSa program a very timely and important initiative. ClimSa's focus to strengthen the climate service value chain by contributing to strengthening the production, availability, delivery, and application of science-based climate prediction and services, and by building the capacities of decision makers at all levels so they can effectively use climate information and services for development decisions will be transformative. The ClimSa program has 5 key result areas. The first, to build a user interface platform to connect producers and users of climate information services. The second key result is to generate climate services through climate information services systems by equipping the regional climate centres with the latest infrastructure and technologies to improve the quality and quantity of accurate and timely climate services. The third result is to connect regional climate centres and national meteorological and hydrological services to advanced global producing centres for access to data and products that are available worldwide. The fourth key result area of ClimSa is to build the capacity of regional climate centres to design, generate, disseminate, and apply climate services to socio-economic sectors. And KRA 5 is to raise awareness of decision makers to develop policies that mainstream climate considerations into national and regional strategies and programs for sustainable development. In order to deliver these key results, ClimSa implementation will be a truly multipartite, multi-agency effort. It is coordinated by the Secretariat of the OACPS's Technical Assistance Team for ClimSa, with 3 technical implementing partners that have already been mentioned, but I will mention them again. The World Meteorological Organization, WMO, the EU Joint Research Centre, JRC, and the European Organization for the Exploitation of Meteorological Satellites, EUMETSAT. In the 6 OACPS regions, the regional organizations being the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, the Economic Community of Central African States, ECAS, the Intergovernmental Agency for Development, IGAD, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, the Indian Ocean Commission, IOC, the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Programme, SPREP, the Caribbean Meteorological Organization, CMO, and the African Union Commission, the AUC, are key stakeholders in monitoring and reporting on the regional grants. As key actors in policy making, the regional centres and the users of the climate information and services in their regions. Since the €85 million financing agreement for ClimSa was signed in September 2018, we have seen regional delegation grant contracts signed in 2019 for SADC, ECOWAS, and IGAD, and for the African Union Commission earlier this year. Partnership signatures with the JRC and WMO were signed in 2019 and with EUMETSAT in late 2020. And signature of the Secretariat of the OACPS's technical assistance was realised in June 2020. So there are still 3 contracts that have yet to be signed, being in the Caribbean, the Pacific, and Indian Ocean regions. So while there is huge potential for climate information services, I'd like to just maybe touch on just some of these. They include the provision of weather, climate, water, and environmental information for early warning to protect lives and livelihoods. They enable planning to boost productivity and economic growth. And they inform policy decisions to manage disaster and climate risk considerations for sustainable development. Climate services would almost certainly benefit the climate sensitive sectors of agriculture, water, health, and energy. And of course, our Secretary General mentioned quite a number of other sectors that will equally benefit from ClimSa. And so what are the benefits of weather and climate predictions? According to a recent World Bank and WMO study, modernising hydromet services can yield a significant rate of return. That is, for every euro invested in observation network infrastructure, you could receive at least 7 times return on that investment. There are even more optimistic metrics which show a 1 to 25 ratio for investing in observation network equipment. But for those investments to be realised, such as the additional 33 billion that could accrue to agriculture and food security, they would need to be underpinned by informed policy and practice decisions. ClimSa intends to support policy awareness and policy development. So I conclude this brief overview of ClimSa by looking forward and seeing what a successful ClimSa program will leave in its wake. We will have an improved decision support system for policy development in our OACPS regions and member states. We will have WMO designated regional climate centres. And importantly, ClimSa will have built the necessary infrastructure and built capacity so that the necessary, timely, accessible climate information and services is provided to inform our sustainable development decisions at all levels and to enable us to build climate resilient societies in and across the OACPS. I thank you all. That ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ASG. And now we are going to follow this session with the interventions from different participants and high-level representatives. And I'm going just to list them now so that we don't have to do them again in the interest of time. So we will be having Commissioner Sekou Sangare, who is the ECOWAS Commissioner in charge of Agriculture, Environment, and Water Resources Department at the ECOWAS Commission. We are going to have Dr. Tabuna Honore, His Excellency the Commissioner for Environment, Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Rural Development at ECAS. We will also have Dr. Andre Kamga, who is the Director General of the Africa Center of Meteorological Application for Development, which is ACMAD. We also have Dr. David Farrell, who is a principal at the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, in short CIMH. And then we'll have Ms. Talagoa Cooper-Halu, the Director General for Climate Change Resilience at the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, SREP. She'll be sending her message through video. We'll have Professor Petri Talas, the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization. Then Dr. Phil Evans, the Director General for EUMETSAT. And lastly, Dr. Giovanni De Santi, Director General for Sustainable Resources at the Joint Research Center, JRC. So now we invite Commissioner Sekou Sangare, if you could please tell us the main challenges that are being faced by the ECOWAS region. Yes, Commissioner Sekou, you have the floor.
Bien, merci. Madame Josepha Léonel Sako, commissaire de l'agriculture, de l'économie bleue et du développement durable de la Commission de l'Union africaine, Monsieur le commissaire en charge de l'environnement de la CEAC, Monsieur le secrétaire général de l'Organisation des États des ACP, Madame Carla Montesi, directrice Green Deal à la Commission de l'Union européenne, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers participants, je voudrais tout d'abord m'acquitter d'un devoir, celui de vous transmettre les chaleureuses félicitations de Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la Commission de la CEDEAO, pour l'organisation de ce webinaire consacré au lancement de ClimSat. Notre continent, l'Afrique, comme vous le savez, fait face depuis plusieurs décennies à une variabilité climatique et des événements météorologiques extrêmes enregistrés dans toutes nos régions économiques, mais également dans toutes nos zones écoclimatiques, qu'elles soient côtières, forestières, de savane, sahéliennes ou désertiques. Les projections du GIEC montrent que l'Afrique de l'Ouest et le Sahel représentent un point chaud dans le contexte du changement climatique. avec des augmentations particulièrement importantes du nombre de journées chaudes, mais également une fréquence de plus en plus élevée des phénomènes climatiques extrêmes, comme nous l'avons connu dans notre région cette décennie, avec de fréquentes inondations et de sécheresses qui ont affecté des populations. Déjà dans notre région, en Afrique de l'Ouest, les hausses de température sont enregistrées partout dans nos pays, et particulièrement au Sahel. Des températures supérieures à 45 degrés à l'ombre, ils sont régulièrement enregistrés. Or, comme nous le savons, le changement climatique est susceptible de réduire les rendements des cultures, de réduire la production et de créer des impacts négatifs sur la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle des populations. Largement dépendant d'une agriculture pluviale et du pastoralisme transhumant pour l'élevage, qui constitue d'ailleurs la principale richesse du Sahel, cette région, le Sahel, est gravement touchée par les sécheresses et les inondations, ainsi que par une concurrence vive pour l'accès aux ressources naturelles, notamment l'eau et les pâturages pour le bétail. Cette situation affecte dangereusement la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle des populations, dans un contexte aussi qui est marqué par le terrorisme, les conflits intercommunautaires, le changement climatique, qui sont, entre autres, rappelons-le, des facteurs de complexification d'une situation sécuritaire qui provoque en Afrique de l'Ouest déjà plus de 7 millions de déplacés internes et des millions aussi de réfugiés. Aussi, les enquêtes réalisées en Afrique de l'Ouest et au Sahel par le cadre harmonisé d'analyse de la vulnérabilité de l'insécurité alimentaire du Comité inter-État de lutte contre la sécheresse dans le Sahel indique très clairement que la population en situation d'insécurité alimentaire pendant les périodes de soudure, cette population, dis-je, est passée d'environ 4 millions de personnes en juin-août 2018 à 17 millions à la même période en 2019-2020. Et aujourd'hui, ce chiffre, d'après les récentes prévisions, annonce plus de 24 millions de personnes en juin et août prochains, si des mesures vigoureuses ne sont pas prises. Vous comprendrez donc, mesdames et messieurs, que la sécheresse, la désertification, la rareté des ressources naturelles et les conflits ont non seulement conduit à la baisse des rendements, mais également elles ont poussé à des abandons de champs de culture et provoqué des déplacements massifs. La réduction, par exemple, en superficie du lac Tchad a aggravé les conditions de vie des pays, des populations, non seulement du Tchad lui-même, mais également de tous les pays riverains, dont le Niger et le nord du Nigeria pour l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Mesdames et messieurs, face à ces défis, la CEDEAO a renforcé sa collaboration avec toutes les institutions régionales spécialisées, notamment le Centre régional Agreement du CILS, qui est devenu, dans le cadre d'un accord de partenariat, le Centre climatique régional de l'Afrique de l'Ouest et du Sahel. Ceci en application de la stratégie africaine intégrée sur la météorologie et du programme météorologique adopté en 2017 pour notre continent. Ce partenariat stratégique entre la CEDEAO et Agreement a favorisé l'assistance conjointe à tous les États membres de la CEDEAO qui disposent aujourd'hui de leur cadre national des services climatologiques. Et parallèlement, nous avons ensemble lancé l'initiative EUMETSAT qui a été développée avec l'appui des partenaires techniques et financiers comme l'OMM et la Banque mondiale. L'objectif, bien sûr, étant de disposer de cadres institutionnels efficaces, disposant de ressources humaines et financières nécessaires pour s'acquitter des fonctions d'observation, de collecte, d'analyse et de traitement de données, de prévision et d'application scientifique. Le prochain forum EUMETSAT, prévu en République de Gambie du 20 au 22 avril 2021 et auquel nous vous convions tous, se déroulera par visioconférence. Il permettra de valider le programme régional d'initiative EUMETSAT et de réduction des catastrophes dans notre région. Il permettra un renforcement des capacités des services nationaux météorologiques et hydrologiques. Et nous l'espérons vivement, la mobilisation de ressources auprès de nos partenaires. Je voudrais, avant de terminer, rappeler que l'ensemble de ce processus est aligné avec la déclaration d'Abidjan que nous avons signée en septembre 2018 et portant sur la prochaine génération de produits satellitaires pour les services météorologiques et hydrologiques et climatiques en Afrique, adoptée bien sûr par la conférence ministérielle en charge de la météorologie et l'ensemble des communautés économiques régionales sous l'égide de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Nous nous félicitons donc, mesdames et messieurs, de l'alignement du programme ClimSa avec la stratégie africaine intégrée sur la météorologie. Et nous nourrissons le grand espoir qu'il permettra de développer des produits satellitaires adaptés à nos besoins. Le ClimSa, nous rêvons qu'il permette de renforcer l'observation à partir des stations, qu'il favorise la collecte et le traitement de données et fournir aux principaux acteurs et aux décideurs, et notamment les collectivités locales, les agriculteurs, les éleveurs, les scientifiques, des informations qui sont basées sur les preuves et la connaissance scientifique, en leur permettant ainsi de mieux planifier leurs activités, de conduire des actions innovantes adaptées à leurs besoins. Ceci, bien sûr, nous l'espérons vivement, passera par le renforcement des infrastructures, la densification des équipements, mais également l'attraction des jeunes vers nos services nationaux météorologiques et hydrologiques, ainsi que la formation des ressources humaines. La CEDEAO, enfin, espère que la mise en œuvre du programme ClimSa renforcera les capacités de notre centre régional AgriMet, la capacité de nos services nationaux météorologiques et hydrologiques pour améliorer les prévisions climatiques de court, moyen et long terme, de réduire les catastrophes, améliorer les capacités d'émission des alertes liées aux inondations et sécheresses dans notre région et de fournir des informations fiables aux décideurs et aux acteurs à tous les niveaux. Plein succès au programme ClimSa, je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sangari. Just to remind the participants that you may wish to kindly post your questions in the chat box, then they'll be answered at the end of this, and also that the full bios of the panelists will be made available on the website. The next question goes to Professor Talas to kindly explain the role that the GFCS will play in the ClimSa project and how these efforts will translate into socioeconomic benefits for the end users in the ACP countries. In the interest of time, we kindly request our distinguished panelists to keep it to the 3-minute maximum. Thank you. Professor Talas, you have the floor. Thank you.
So first of all, thanks for the invitation to address you, and thanks for this very important project that we are kicking off. We are very grateful for European Commission and all of you who have been behind this very successful preparation of the work. WMO has organized 3 World Climate Conferences so far. In the first one, we established IPCC, which is providing scientific reports for global use. And in the third World Climate Conference in 2009, we decided to establish a global framework for climate services. And there's a need to mitigate the impacts of climate change and adapt to climate change. And that's why we established the global framework for climate services. And we would like to see improvement of the climate services worldwide. We have about half of our members which don't have proper climate services, and that's why the impacts of climate change are felt very strongly, and it's having very big negative impacts on various sectors in the countries like agriculture. We are the organization in the UN family which is reporting about the status of climate. We just in our recent reports, we demonstrated we have already seen 1.2 degrees forming, and there's 25% probability that we will reach the low limit of Paris Agreement, 1.5, already during the coming 5 years. So that's so we are fairly close to the low limit of Paris Agreement. We have been breaking records in the concentrations of main greenhouse gases year by year, and for example, carbon dioxide is at the record level, and that's causing 2/3 of the warming that we have seen so far. There has been a boost in sea level rise. In the past century, we used to have 1 to 2 millimeters per year sea level rise, and recently we have seen 3 to 5 millimeters per year sea level rise. And we have started seeing unusual tropical storms in the Caribbean. We were breaking all-time record last year, and for example, Mozambique has been exposed to cyclones, which are very, very unusual. We have seen changes in the rainfall patterns. We have seen, for example, in Africa, quite often drought, but also flooding problems. The glaciers are melting worldwide, and that's bad news when it comes to access to freshwater resources. For the UN and for the welfare of the mankind, it's essential that we pay attention to climate mitigation. And the COP26 this year in Glasgow is going to be a very critical meeting. And there are plenty of positive promises in the air. And as UN, we expect that there would be 90% of the global emissions behind the carbon neutrality target 2050 or 2060, which is the target of China. But there's also need to pay attention to climate adaptation. And in the UN, we think that half of the climate financing should go to climate adaptation. And this negative trend in climate will continue until 2060s anyhow. And it's very much felt through impacts of water. It's a drought, it's flooding, it's coastal inundation, and this water is having perhaps has had the biggest impact on human well-being. Of course, in some areas like in Caribbean and Pacific Islands, the tropical storms, typhoons, cyclones, and hurricanes have been dominant ones and very dramatic impacts. Besides paying attention to these climate services and early warning services, it's important to pay attention to the fact that we have fairly poor observing systems. Especially in Africa, Caribbean and Pacific Islands, we have major data gaps, and that means that the early warning services in those regions are limited, and we have to invest in that. And that's why we as WMO, we are just initiating a new program called Systematic Observation Financing Facility, SOF, and our aim is to mobilize $400 billion to improve the situation, especially in ACP countries. As I already said, only half of our members have proper climate and weather services, and we are very much serving as a platform to transfer know-how from our developed country members towards our less developed countries. And as part of this kind of project, it's important that we at the same time enhance the willingness of the countries to deliver data for global use. This is having a positive impact on the early warning service quality in your countries and of course worldwide. We are very grateful for European Commission that you have decided to finance this program, and in general we are very pleased that European Union, as part of your future planning, you have an intention to allocate 30% of your financing for climate-related activities. I was having a very good meeting with Commissioner Urpilainen a few weeks ago, and we discussed opportunities for climate adaptation-related financing in the future. One of the things when it comes to climate and weather services is to understand also the impact of the weather and climate events, and that's what we would like to promote. It's not enough that we can forecast the meteorological parameters, temperature, wind, precipitation. We have to also forecast the impact on various sectors like agriculture, public safety, energy, health, and water sectors. So that's needed to be more impactful in those activities. And we have counted that there's a chance to save plenty of human lives by investing more in those services. And there would be also potential for several billions a year of savings by improving those services in low impact and middle impact, low economic development and middle economic development related countries. And for us, it's very important that also in this project you are paying attention to the national meteorological and hydrological services, which are the national authorities in charge of these kind of services. And they are the ones also who can ensure the sustainability of the investment. So we are very pleased with that, and we urge you to play lots of these activities around the national meteorological and hydrological services. That's the way to ensure the sustainability of this investment. And from WMO's side here in Geneva, we are most happy to support all steps of this project, and we are really grateful for all of you who have been behind this preparatory work. With these words, I would like to wish you all the best for this project and all the best for our future climate. Thank you.
Thank you, SG. And now, Dr. David Farrell, how does the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology work with the user communities to define the climate services needed to be delivered? And also, maybe you could also tell us a little bit more on what added value you're expecting from ClimSa project to provide to the Caribbean. Also, try and keep it below the 3-minute threshold. Thank you. David, you have the floor.
Thank you. To everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Protocols established. I am David Farrell, and I am representing here the Caribbean Meteorological Organization and the organ, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology. But on a much larger note, I'm actually representing the Caribbean region on this panel. I'd like to start by just simply thanking the ACP EU for making these funds available to the Caribbean region. And I'd like to thank WMO for supporting us. The region is about to sign the agreement, the ClimSa agreement with the EU in the near future, so we should become part of that list of persons who have signed. With regards to the ClimSa project, the first thing is to recognize is that the Caribbean is one of the most vulnerable regions in the world to weather and climate shocks. And this is expected to increase as we go forward into the future under climate change. In 2009, 2010, the region experienced a significant drought. The unfortunate thing about the drought is that despite the Institute providing some information forecasting the drought, the warnings were not effectively acted upon by the Met services and other parties in the region until we were well into the drought. And this caused a concern for us because it was clear that the communication between the regional institutions, such as the Institute and national institutions, was weak in the area of climate. Obviously, regional political leadership is not particularly happy about the situation and demanded a change from the business as usual approach to ensure that we could build resilience to increasing weather and climate changes in the region. The first thing that the Institute did was to really look at the situation and started to try to build stronger partnerships within the area of climate and climate services to the Met services. The other thing that was kind of fortuitous at this time as well is that we were starting to build some level of climate service. And this was also coincided with the WMO launching the Global Framework for Climate Services, which laid out a framework for increasing communication and strengthening user interface platforms between climate service providers and users of climate services. And so there were two clear strategies that the Institute started to work with in the region. One is to build user interface platforms between the CIMH being the regional climate service provider and the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services. But also the second approach was to work with the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services to develop user interface platforms between them and national stakeholders in country. The other thing was the emergence of the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum. And this fueled the development of the CIMH National Hydrological Services interface through things like the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum. And the forum provided for the two groups to meet initially to discuss and reach consensus on climate outlooks for the wet season. And this soon turned into climate outlooks as well for the dry season. In addition to providing a consensus climate outlook for the region, the forum also presented the opportunity for capacity building for national and regional climate forecasters, as well as an opportunity to further strengthen the region to national user interface through collegial discussions and the provision of feedback on the successor forecasts. The progress has been made on the user interface platforms in the region. In fact, significant progress has been made over the years, as well as extending these user interfaces down to the national level. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But the success of the user interface platforms and the Karakov process was demonstrated in 2014 to 2016 and 2019 to 2020, where we had significant droughts in the region, but the impacts were mitigated by the user interfaces providing that information in a clear and concise way to the users of climate information, those vulnerable sectors in the region, to the point that we had no complaints coming from the political directorate in the region, and sectors managed to adapt their activities effectively. The challenge still remains in the region, really, with regards to the interfaces at the national level. Some countries have done a very good job in building the interfaces at the national level, but some are still some way behind, and we're working with those that are behind to catch up. But those that are ahead of the curve have been effective in communicating with their national stakeholders through national climate outlook forums that are being established. But those that are somewhat behind are still trying to communicate climate information through different mechanisms to national stakeholders. And so we will be working with them under the ACP EU program to really support the building of these user interface platforms at the regional level, where the Institute will provide climate information service, climate services to regional partners, but also working with the national meteorological and hydrological services to build out the national programs as well. We expect that once we can do this, we can further mitigate climate risk within the region by providing effective platforms through which information can be delivered, and that information will be trusted by all stakeholders because they would be part of the partnership, which involves co-designing of the products, co-development of the products, and co-delivery of the products. With that, again, I would, and before I close, I would just like to say one thing, that we expect that this process of building user interface platforms and for the development of climate services and national meteorological and hydrological services to be strengthened through a legislative process, which is currently being, where model legislation is currently being developed by the Caribbean Meteorological Organization headquarters unit, led by Dr. Arlene Lang. And in closing, I would simply like to thank the EU and the WMO, the ACP EU and the WMO for their support, and pledge that the benefits from the project will be sustained through regional investments, partnerships, and new development programs. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to go to Dr. Giovanni. Dr. Giovanni, could you tell us a little bit of how the Copernicus will contribute to ClimSa, and in a few words also describe the main contributions to the Joint Research Center to the ClimSa program?
C'est la CAC qui devrait parler, non? S'il vous plaît. Il était question que la CAC prenne la parole depuis. Selon le programme.
Thank you, Excellency. We'll take Dr. Giovanni and then we come back to ECAS.
Okay. Thank you, Leah, very much. And also thanks to the organizers having invited me to represent.
La parole devrait être à la CAC normalement, non?
Okay, can I go ahead or shall I still wait? I don't know.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So again, thank you very much for the invitation, having invited me and represent the GRC that, as you know, is the Directorate General within the European Commission in charge for research and science in support to policy. Now, the question about Copernicus, you know that the European Union through the Copernicus programs, has made a substantial investment in Earth observation, and also we attach all the derived services. And this could be considered a very important multiplier also in future to support the needs and requests from ACP regions. So Copernicus program is going to be at the center of our collaboration and support also for ACP regions. Copernicus, as you know, is very well based on the satellites named Sentinels. We have launched the very first Sentinel in 2014, and we plan to have launched more than 20 Sentinels satellites before 2030. So now Copernicus services are at the heart of this program because they transform raw data into real value-added information by processing and analyzing the data. So the services are the key core aspect of the Copernicus program. At the moment, we do see 6 core services that address the following 6 domains: land, atmosphere, marine environment, climate change, emergency, and security. Now, why is Copernicus so important? How can be linked to ClimSa? First of all, Copernicus is full, free, and open. So you can get data from satellite and services for free and in a very open and transparent manner. Copernicus is a long-term commitment of the European Commission to deliver data, products, and services. So you have very little risk in losing access to data if you do use Copernicus. So it's a very clear long-term program which gives guarantee to whoever wants to use Copernicus data for a long-term service. And of course, it's a dynamic service. So it will respond to new needs and requirements. So how? Of course, we need to follow the evolution, for example, in Europe or the European Union policy, but also the international commitments, in a way that we will support in a justifiable and traceable manner, but also scientifically and technically sound. So we need to provide scientific robust science, robust data, reliable data for this kind of continuously evolving requirements from the European Union, member states, but also from outside Europe. So a fundamental, for example, a fundamental benefit that Copernicus is giving to ClimSa SA is to provide a set of guaranteed quality control core products, such as the climate data store, so the CDS, that upon which we can build up targeted products and services from the different ACP countries, corresponding therefore fitting their application decision-making process. So with this open source of ClimSa data source store, which is a platform, you can get reliable data, you can get reliable information, and we, together with you, we can therefore tailor better our services to your targeted process, so we can support your policy. For example, in Europe, Copernicus has already demonstrated a tremendous added value of building strong value chains, enabled therefore by services and fueled by sustainable services. So the combination of strong services and a sustainable and observing system, we can really build up a really strong value chain. And the same thing we can do now for ClimSa in the ACP country, because the ClimSa has, through the strong institutional mandate of regional climate centers, the same capacity to establish equivalent strong value chains. So again, with ClimSa, we can build up a strong value chain, not only, as we said, for Europe, but also in ACP countries. So overall, the Copernicus, in our view, is an important added value for supporting policies in the different ACP countries with the support of ClimSa, getting together the best and tailored services corresponding to the needs. So for what concerns the contribution that JSC is giving to ClimSa, but we know that we have very strong and long-lasting partnership with Africa institutions, but we also have a long-term vision. So we want now to develop new instruments, and I like very much to mention a new African knowledge platform, which hopefully will be finalized and launched by our commissioner during the next summit, EU-AU, in whenever September this year. So it will be an entry point for whoever wants to know about the European Commission activity towards Africa, so the Africa Knowledge Platform, which doesn't exist at the moment. We have since already 2-3 years a knowledge center on food and nutrition security, and we are going to launch 20th of April, this coming April, the 20th of April, the knowledge center on Earth observation. So this will be a very important moment at the presence of our Vice Minister, Vice President Timmermans, our Commissioner, Maria Gabriel, and also Commissioner for the FIS. I think we will launch this knowledge center, which will be the entry point for whoever wants to know how to use satellites, Earth observation for many policies, which goes from safety to agriculture, to environment, marine observation, forest, and whatsoever. So just to give an example. We, of course, for ClimSa, we come from many, many years of collaboration. We have already developed many projects like the so-called AMEST, MESA, GMES Africa, BioPharma. These are all projects that we have developed together. And based on this, we can continue. For example, the work based on climate station, which is useful just to get profit from all the satellite and airborne data to improve our environmental monitoring, and therefore to work together with scientists and experts in the member states, in the African member states, is very important, because then we can provide future and forthcoming tools like the GDO, so the Global Drought Observatory, or the ASAP, so the Anomaly Hotspot Agriculture Products, but also the WMO toolkit. So I think that together, I think we can develop many, many important support, scientific support to different policies in this domain, like we do in Europe, support now agriculture, the forest, the food system, the water resources, the disaster risk reduction. So again, via this new satellite data, via this knowledge center on Earth observation, via all experience already exists in different domains, we can enhance our work in the ACP countries based on what we do already, still based on the same technology in Europe, supported the different policies, as I said, ranging from agriculture to environment to forest to water resources. So, this is again will be done via the Africa Knowledge Platform, which again will encompass all this kind of effort in a much more coordinated way from the Commission to the external world. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni. And now we have the honor to welcome His Excellency Dr. Tabune Honore. We were saving the best for last, Commissioner. So Dr. Tabuna, ECAS has established a new regional climate center for Central Africa. What is the expectation, the main expectation from the region? When should we expect the center to be fully operational? And then if you are able to also address on how can ClimSa help the CAPC-AP center to deliver the climate services to users in a sustainable way. Dr. Tabuna, you have the floor, and apologies again.
Oui, merci, monsieur le modérateur, de me passer la parole. Je voudrais saisir cette occasion pour saluer Madame la commissaire de l'Union africaine en charge du département économie rurale, agriculture et économie bleue. Saluer Madame la représentante de la Commission de l'Union européenne, Monsieur le secrétaire de l'Organisation des États de l'Afrique, des Caraïbes et du Pacifique, mon collègue commissaire en charge de l'agriculture, de l'environnement, des ressources en eau de la CEDEAO. Je salue également les experts de l'Union, de la Commission de l'Union africaine. Mesdames, Messieurs, donc permettez-moi, pour répondre à votre question, tout d'abord de remercier au nom de son Excellence l'ambassadeur Gilberto da Piedade Verissimo, président de la Commission de la Communauté économique des États de l'Afrique centrale, qui a tout fait, qui s'est investi personnellement pour que nous participions à l'organisation de cette rencontre virtuelle combien importante pour les États membres de la CEAC. Je tiens à remercier pour l'organisation de cet événement de lancement virtuel du programme Services climatiques et applications connexes ClimSa à Bruxelles. Je pense notamment au secrétariat de l'Organisation des États d'Afrique, des Caraïbes et du Pacifique et des institutions internationales très impliquées, partenaires, dans la mise en œuvre du programme intra-ACP relatif aux services et applications climatologiques. C'est dans ce cadre que la collaboration entre la CEAC et l'Union européenne a pris pour nous un relève tout particulier avec la mise en place et l'exécution du programme intra-ACP sur les services climatiques et les applications connexes en Afrique centrale. Cet appui, donc, mis en œuvre dans le cadre mondial pour les services climatologiques dans la région de la CEAC d'un montant de 6 millions d'euros. Ce programme holistique conçu pour le développement de la gestion intégrée des ressources en eau, de l'éducation et la sensibilisation aux risques climatiques, les systèmes d'alerte précoce, l'énergie et la santé, le transport, la réduction des risques et de catastrophes, les infrastructures. Donc, il a pour but de contribuer de manière significative et durable à la croissance inclusive, à la réduction de la pauvreté, la gestion environnementale, la construction des infrastructures résilientes plutôt, gestion des villes vertes et durables, la gestion des risques et de catastrophes telles que les inondations, la sécheresse, l'érosion, en Afrique centrale notamment. C'est dans ce cadre que nous pensons que le projet sera implanté au Centre d'application et de prévision climatologique de l'Afrique centrale, CAPC. Il a été créé donc en 2015 par décision des chefs d'État. Il représente aujourd'hui pour nous un puissant outil de coopération et d'intégration sous-régionale en matière de prévision météorologique et climatique, à la fois sur le plan politique, institutionnel, diplomatique, socio-économique et environnemental. Il vise donc à relever les défis liés donc aux questions, aux conséquences du changement climatique. Et en créant ce centre, pour nous, nous visons à renforcer les capacités des États membres de la CEAC à travers la fourniture des services météorologiques et climatiques en temps réel, dans le but de contribuer à minimiser les effets néfastes des changements climatiques et les risques de catastrophes. Donc, on peut les citer, l'inondation, sécheresse, glissement de terrain et la vague de chaleur. Ce centre devra donc produire également des informations à usage socio-économique intéressant donc certains secteurs comme ce secteur de l'agriculture, le secteur de l'économie bleue. Sur le plan politique et institutionnel, l'opérationnalisation imminente de ce centre, prévue normalement avant la fin du mois de juin, est une traduction de l'engagement des chefs d'État de la CEAC à la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris, des conventions internationales sur les changements climatiques, les objectifs de développement durable et le cadre d'action de Sendai 2020-2030. Les activités de ce centre s'inscrivent par ailleurs dans les prévisions du plan stratégique indicatif moyen terme 2021-2025 de notre département en charge de l'environnement, ressources naturelles, agriculture et développement rural, ainsi que son plan d'action prioritaire pour l'année 2021, présenté et validé par les chefs d'État de la sous-région en novembre 2020. Le plan stratégique 2021-2025 de notre département découle donc de la vision globale de notre institution, compte tenu de la mission qui lui a été assignée par les chefs d'État et de gouvernement en juillet 2020. Il s'aligne sur les objectifs de l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine, l'agenda 2030 des Nations unies et plusieurs décisions des chefs d'État de la CEAC en matière d'économie verte, dont la décision portant sur l'économie verte et la décision sur les programmes sectoriels, dont plusieurs programmes. On peut citer le programme sur l'éco-agriculture, ainsi que la décision par rapport à la mise à l'élaboration de la stratégie régionale d'Afrique centrale de prévention des risques et gestion des catastrophes et d'adaptation au changement climatique. Mesdames, Messieurs, l'objectif global qui traduit la vision à long terme du département, environnement, ressources naturelles, agriculture et développement rural de la CEAC consiste à préserver les conditions de vie des générations futures de manière à garantir un développement durable qui permettra d'accroître significativement la production, la productivité et la compétitivité de la sous-région tout en garantissant la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle aux populations ainsi qu'un accès durable au marché régional et international. J'ose espérer que l'Union européenne, à travers la Commission de l'Union africaine, ne ménagera aucun effort pour accompagner la Commission de la CEAC pour l'atteinte des résultats escomptés, notamment pour parvenir au développement de l'économie agricole et forestière à travers la mise en œuvre de plusieurs programmes sectoriels permanents communautaires. Je fais allusion, entre autres, au secteur de la protection de l'environnement, le changement climatique et la gestion des risques et catastrophes auxquels beaucoup de partenaires ont déjà marqué leur intérêt pour la sous-région Afrique centrale. Au regard donc de ce qui précède, qu'il me soit permis de vous exprimer une fois de plus ma sincère gratitude pour les appuis constants et multiformes reçus de la part de l'Union européenne, du secrétariat de l'Organisation des États d'Afrique, des Caraïbes et du Pacifique et à la Commission de l'Union africaine. Je saisis cette occasion pour féliciter l'ensemble du personnel de l'EACP pour sa disponibilité et le travail accompli qui ont permis une collaboration fructueuse entre nos deux institutions. Je ne saurais clore mon propos sans vous réitérer mes remerciements pour l'exemplarité de la coopération entre la CEAC et l'intra-ACP qui s'est diversifiée et enrichie sous votre mandature. Je tiens également à féliciter votre implication personnelle à l'organisation de cet événement, Madame la ministre, la commissaire en charge de l'économie bleue, du développement rural et de l'agriculture de l'Union africaine, représentant le président de la Commission. La CAPC pour la Commission de l'Union, pour la Commission de la CEAC, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, est un outil important pour la coopération de nos États membres en matière de changement climatique. Nous sommes en train de tout faire pour que cette opérationnalisation-là soit effective au plus tard au cours du mois de juin, comme cela a été dit au début donc, de ma communication. Vive la commission de la CEAC, vive la coopération internationale, vive la coopération entre la CEAC et l'Union africaine, vive la coopération entre la CEAC et la Commission de l'Union africaine. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and also for the last, your last comments over there. I now ask Dr. Andre to please provide us with examples of climate services being delivered by ACMAD and the benefits for users of these services. What are the main capacity gaps in Africa that ClimSa could also help address? Dr. Andre ACMAD, you have the floor.
Hello? Hello?
We hear you, Dr. Andre.
Okay, yeah. So good morning, everyone, and thanks to the AU, the African Union Commission, through the Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Economy and Environment, as well as Blue Economy. for this opportunity to talk to you about the achievements in MESA and then the capacity that we need to develop in Africa. So I will start by the main priority mentioned following the EUMETSAT meeting. The situation is that early warning system is top on the agenda. And in the ClimSa project, we have 3 information services that are expected to be developed. The first one being the Climate Information Service for Disaster Risk Management that EUMETSAT initiated with the MESA program. So in this information service, we are envisaging an integrated information service that is going from local to national, sub-regional and continental level. And then a multi-hazard also, because as many of the past speakers indicated, we have disruptions on the onset of the rainy season. We have floods, droughts, we have hot days, and all this has to be handled through a climate service information system that is integrated and multi-hazards. And I would also thank WMO Secretary General for his statement. And we are looking forward to work with WMO in actually applying the guidelines and procedures that WMO has on multi-hazard early warning system and even the alert protocols to make this information system really operational. On the other hand, we have on the agriculture sector a situation of high impact of climate change. So the second climate service information system we'll be developing will be climate information service for meningitis epidemic surveillance and control. This information service will be expanded to malaria and heat-related diseases in particular. As you have seen, the warming level in Africa is quite high. And we have assessments which indicated that in the late 70s, less than 4% of the African land masses were touched by hot days. We are in 2020 at about more than 10%. And for the floods, it moved from less than 2% in the early 80s to now about 40%. In 2020, 40% of African land areas were hit by heavy rain. So this highlights the interconnection between disaster risk management, health, and even agriculture. So the capacity in Africa we are expecting to see would be particularly under the remaining regional centers that become WMO certified. And they also will have a strong collaboration with WMO in supporting this initiative so that in 4 years' time, all the regional centers in Africa are WMO certified. We'll have a specific attention to the ECAS Center on this because it is a new organization set up. We need a lot of support from the region and the globe. So having said that, I thank you for giving me these few minutes to interact with you and highlight the views of EUMETSAT and the African meteorological community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andre Kamga. We are about 3 minutes over the time we are supposed to have finished this session. So I'm going to beg your indulgence to continue a little bit and take about 10 more minutes of your time. I'm also requesting the Secretariat to support in responding to some of the questions in the chat, which are addressed to them, some of them. I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Phil Evans from EUMETSAT, and he's going to tell us about the role of satellite data in monitoring climate in Africa and the level of uptake of this data and use of this data to generate products and services that helped in decision making to improve the livelihoods of communities. And also, Dr. Phil, if you could also tell us how EUMETSAT will contribute to the ClimSa program.
Distinguished panelists, dear colleagues and dear moderator. Firstly, I would like to tell you that I took up my duty as the new EUMETSAT Director General on the 1st of January this year, replacing Alain Ratier. It is therefore a real pleasure for me to take part in this ClimSa launch event, even if it is only through video conferencing. Let me first underline that our 30 members states are placing a great importance in ensuring that our satellite data can be easily accessed and exploited by users in many regions of the world. I would like to assure you of my commitment to continue EUMETSAT's effort to serve our user community in developing countries in the ACP regions. In these regions, ground-based weather and climate observation networks are not as dense as perhaps they should be, and satellite data are therefore a precious source of information and can greatly facilitate the delivery of weather, hydrological, and climate services in support to regional and national needs. So coming back to your question, Mrs. Moderator, about the role of satellite data in climate monitoring. First of all, we operate the METEO satellites over Europe and Africa and have done so for more than 40 years now. During all of those years, the data from the satellites were and continue to be used daily in real time by several hundreds of users in all African countries for weather forecasting. In addition, based on these 40 years of data, EUMETSAT is providing climate data records, which are consistent and calibrated time series of satellite observations. These data records allow the monitoring of various essential climate variables, such as precipitation, albedo, or winds. Satellite data can play a role in monitoring the climate if we run these satellites and collect observations on a continuous and sustainable way during several decades. And this is exactly what we do at EUMETSAT. Our member states have also approved the METEOSAT 3rd generation, which will be there for the next 20 years, extending the observation of climate parameters from space over Africa from 40 to 60 years. We also operate several satellites which are continuously monitoring ocean parameters, such as sea surface temperature and the sea level rise. These satellites play a major role in observing phenomena like El Nino or La Nina. They provide important inputs to seasonal forecasting, which are key for agriculture, but also for other socio-economic sectors. As you rightly pointed out, Mrs. Moderator, the challenge is how to ensure uptake of these satellite data to improve livelihood in the communities. For this, the key word is partnership. EUMETSAT works closely with WMO, regional climate centres and other stakeholders like the Joint Research Centre and the Copernicus Climate Change Services that have the capacities to process these data and create value-added services. And this for us is the main raison d'etre of the ClimSa programme, strengthening the capacities in the ACP regions so that operational value chain from data to service to communities can be established. And we are looking forward to contribute to ClimSa in the years to come. Thank you.
Apologies for that. We now welcome our last speaker for today, and that is Ms. Tagaloa Kupa-Halo from the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, SREP. And she's going to share her experience in working with users at the community level on early warning system, and also the benefits expected from the ClimSa project to the Pacific region.
Talofa lava and warm greetings from the Pacific. My name is Tagaloa Kupa and I'm the Director for the Climate Change Resilience Program of SPREP. It is a pleasure to join everyone at this special occasion, the launch of the ClimSa project. SPREP is the lead in the Pacific, is excited to be part of this project. In In our region, 70% of our population live in communities, with some living in very remote areas and exposed to ocean and extreme weather, climate-related hazards. In that regard, from our experience, when communities use climate science information that has been tailored and contextualized to fit their needs, it allows them to apply this information in order to plan, respond, and absorb shocks, impacts from natural disasters, climate variability, and change. And a recent example, and probably a very relevant example, is Pacific Island countries that we work with have now seen the value of integrating traditional knowledge and science in community-based early warning system activities. This increases the level of uptake and ownership and understanding of climate science. Similarly, by translating science terminology into local narrative and using scientific methods to monitor traditional knowledge, indicators issued or used by communities as part of their early warning system, very importantly and critically validates communities and empowers them. ClimSa would ensure that we are better coordinated as a region under a virtual Pacific Climate Centre. It will also enable us to demonstrate how climate information can be used for decision-making by sectors such as agriculture and DRR, disaster risk reduction, resilience. It will strengthen the Pacific Island Climate Outlook Forum as a medium of sharing information with our sectors, and by doing so enable sectors to plan ahead and respond to the particular events. It also ensures the establishment of these national outlook forums and that they will remain relevant. All these together strengthens user feedback from the sectors to help improve our resilience. I take this opportunity to thank you all for the partnership, and we look forward to the continued collaboration and shared learning from the other sister and sub-regions who are also part of this project. We look forward very much to your partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the distinguished panelists for a wonderful session. And now we are going to open the floor for questions and discussions from the floor. We do have some questions in the chat. We may not be able to take any live questions for now, due to the time. So unless there's one burning one from any of the female participants who may be present, just to hear a bit more from them. So I'll quickly go to the chat. There was some questions have already been answered. So we'll take the first one from Meropi Panelli on an additional path that the EU EC supporting ACP countries through the cluster. I think this is more like a comment on how the interfaces on e-platforms, e-infrastructures, databases, e-decision support systems are developed on the Horizon 2020 could take into account the ClimSa program. I guess this question goes to the EC. Then there's a question on climate change and the issue of desertification and land degradation, and greenhouse gases, etc. And do these indicators not and reports a strong incentive to urge decision makers to engage more and more in climate programs in these countries by activating relations and increasing demand at the level of the United Nations? I don't think we had a speaker from the UN, but I guess Mr. Andre could take this question. I think these two are the only ones for now. Some have been answered already, as I said. Yeah. So Dr. Andre, do you want to take this question on by Adele?
Yeah, the question is actually related to developing the information service we talked about. Yes, it is absolutely critical for us to, with the ClimSa program, to come up with clear numerical values on the level of warming, for example, in our mega cities like Lagos, for example, what has been the warming over the past several decades, and what is the exact expectation, the increases in hot days, things like also frequency of floods in those cities that need to be well assessed and then well communicated for our policymakers to understand the need to act and act quickly. So there is a wealth of data coming from Copernicus and other global programs that will be able to use to make this information readily available. So that's what we can say there. And thank you to the person who asked the question.
Thank you, Andre. We have Commissioner Sekou, who has his hand up. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Bien, merci. Je voudrais juste poser deux questions d'éclaircissement parce que la session d'aujourd'hui a porté sur le lancement du programme ClimSa. Alors, quelle va être la suite? Quel va être le cadre des opérations, les relations avec les centres climatiques régionaux, notamment Agrimet pour nous, pour les futures opérations? Deuxième question, il y a un intervenant, je crois que c'est le représentant de l'ACMAP, qui disait que la certification des centres régionaux va continuer. Alors, je voudrais savoir pour notre région, qu'en est-il? Où est-ce que nous en sommes? Parce que pour nous, le choix de Agrimet, il est définitif. La certification, bon, je pense que c'est un centre qui a fait ses preuves depuis très longtemps et on avance dans la mise en œuvre des activités. Donc, je veux savoir concrètement comment tout ça va se passer, parce que le projet, c'est sur un temps bien limité. Si on continue à attendre trop, bon, les choses risquent de se dégrader alors qu'il y a des besoins urgents. Merci.
Thank you, Excellency. On your question, I would like to pass this to the OSCPS Secretariat to respond. Dr. Faka, are you able to take this one?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate our commissioner for raising the questions, and we are keen really to see how can we catch up for the delay. Of course, the program has got already a project management arrangement, which will be based on the project steering committee, where we are expecting all the REC will be represented during that steering committee, where we are going to decide to approve the work plan and also to approve the progress report. And we'll also let them be informed on how are we moving with the other aspect. For now, Agrimet already started implementing the project. There is not really a challenge unless just the current crisis of the pandemic. They are moving. We're expecting that Indian Ocean, Caribbean, and the Pacific, where the three regions have not yet signed the ground agreement, but we are doing our best so that we don't delay anymore on what is already on ground with the crisis, so our people can benefit from the output of this program. For anything on detail, we are going to get in touch with them to communicate to them how progress we are making, which challenge we are having, at which level our decision makers at the regional organization can intervene to boost the implementation of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we'll take one last quick response from Dr. André, and then we'll
Ok, oui, je vais répondre en français pour que ce soit bien compris. Je pense que c'est important. Oui, nous avons actuellement sur l'Afrique 2 centres, Nairobi et Ahmad, qui sont certifiés Centre climatique régional de l'OMM. Les autres vont exploiter l'opportunité de ce projet pour faire ce qu'on appelle la phase de démonstration. Et il faudrait indiquer que le Centre climatique régional a 4 fonctions obligatoires: la veille climatique, la prévision longue échéance, la formation des pays à la prévision longue échéance notamment, et puis le service des données climatiques. Donc, parmi les centres, certains ont des capacités, des compétences dans d'autres domaines, tels que l'agriculture, la gestion de l'eau, mais il faudra mettre en place des équipes pour faire la démonstration des capacités à remplir les fonctions obligatoires d'un centre climatique régional. Donc, c'est un domaine connexe, mais avec ses différences, sur lequel nous avons d'ailleurs intervenu dans la planification du projet du centre Agrimet pour impliquer, pour mettre certaines activités qui permettent de le faire. Ce sera le cas pour l'Afrique centrale et pour l'Afrique australe également. Merci.
Thank you, Andre. Just before we close, I would like to give the floor to Valentina from the EC.
Yes, good afternoon and good morning or good evening. No, I wanted to answer the question that you first made from Meropi Panelli on the links with the research programs. Sadly, my director, Carla Montesi, had to go to another meeting, so she's not connected anymore. Otherwise, she would have answered this question. But well, just to maybe briefly summarize that, yeah, of course, this is a very important comment, and it's something that we try to do every day in all our work for all our projects and programs, making the links between the different actions happening and financed by different organizations or on different topics, either research or climate change or disaster risk reduction. Well, just to mention that at the beginning, when we were designing the entire intra-ACP program, we tried to make these links, or we made these links with colleagues in the different EC departments in charge. We also make the links with each of the actions in the different regions. So either with the colleagues in the EU delegations or with the implementing partners, all the regional implementing agencies that have that are participating today. And then, generally, we also try to set up meetings as well with implementing partners from all different organizations to coordinate this and set up coordination mechanisms. It's something very difficult to do, so we encourage everyone that is listening and also the implementing partners to contact as Dr. Faka mentioned in the question and answer chat, to contact the technical assistance facility, Dr. Faka, so to try to set up these meetings and share information. So we welcome very much this comment, and yeah, we look forward to it. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Valentina. And now, without further taking time, I would like to thank all the panelists, the distinguished panelists once again, and all the people who contributed in the Q&A session, and to all our listeners out there, those who are following us on Zoom and those who are following us on streaming live. So I would like to pass over this to a close. So I have the honor now to invite His Excellency Mr. George Rebelo Pinto Chikoti, the Secretary General, to deliver his closing remarks. Secretary General, you have the floor. Secretariat, do we have the SG?
Excellency, your mic is muted. You need to unmute it. You are still muted for the moment. We cannot hear you.
Secrétaire général, votre micro est fermé, s'il vous plaît.
Apologies for the technical challenges we are facing. We'll try and get the mic.
Okay, I think I'm through now. I think I'm through. Okay, that's fine now. Just a moment. I think I'm. Well, thank you very much. I think it has been a long day, and naturally, technology has been a little bit difficult as well for us, but I think I'm through now. I think you can now hear me.
We can.
Hello? Okay, thank you. Well, the ClimSa program's efforts to promote wider and easier access and use to timely climate information services is not only the result of a collective moral obligation to benefit and inform the decision-making process at the highest political levels, but it is also our collective responsibility to do so for decision makers at all levels, including our farmers and fishers. The World Bank, World Meteorological Organization study that was highlighted by some in several interventions today has struck a chord with me. That is, while the cumulative economic costs of weather-related disasters in Africa over the last 2 decades was around 8.25 billion euros. There is hope that this does not need to be the case in the future. It will require investing in operational observing systems through modernizing our hydrometeorological services and building strong regional climate centers throughout the members and regions of the OACPS. I took careful note that for every euro invested in climate information services, there will be at least 7 times the return on investment. It will most certainly help us to lift many of our peoples out of poverty. It will keep us safe, and it will allow us all to live free and worthwhile lives. The OACPS looked forward to working closely with key partners at all levels to ensure that ClimSa is a success and will deliver the necessary climate information services to transform our societies and economies while achieving environmental sustainability. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your deliveries today, and I thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
The Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, OACPS, is at the forefront of the struggle against climate change. Its 79 members, which have low coping capacity, are amongst the most vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. In the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Paris Agreement, providing science-based information with reliable data on climate change and climate variability is critical. In partnership with the EU, the Secretariat of the OACPS has initiated the Intra-ACP Climate Services and Related Application Programme, ClimSa. The objective of ClimSa is to contribute to strengthen the production, availability, delivery and application of science-based information, in order to improve the quality and quantity of regional climate prediction and services offered by ACP regional climate centers and national hydrometeorological organizations. ClimSa will therefore provide decision-makers with innovative and collaborative solutions to manage climate-related risks. It will contribute to social-economic benefits in 5 climate-sensitive sectors, namely, agriculture and food security, health, water, disaster risk reduction and energy.